welcome back to Hey Kentucky. Last week, we learned that Ashland native Ashley Judd would share the cover of Time magazine for Person of the Year amid her sexual harassment allegations that are helping change our culture. Tonight, part 2 of Matt's interview with Ashley.
So how do you go from here? And I don't mean you personally, but where does society go? I mean, do you think we will have a longer period of hearing about more people? I mean, it has been every walk of life. It's been every party. It's been every age. I mean, do you think this continues to happen like this?
Well, I like and appreciate how well you just articulated that, because it identifies that it's a system in which we're all operating. And it's important to note that patriarchy isn't boys and men. It is a system in which we're all participating. And just as I've outlined some of the things that it's helpful for women to do, boys and men absolutely have to be a part of the solution. And right now we're treating the systemic problem downstream. We're dealing with repercussions and consequences, and we're seeing amazing things like the end of impunity. But where we need to get eventually is upstream to prevention and showing boys and men how not to aggress, how to respect girls' and women's bodies and boundaries. You know, 81% of adolescent boys polled did not know what consent meant. They thought literally it didn't mean that no didn't mean no, it meant try harder. And that is so disturbing, but at least we have the data on where we are so that we can design programs and solutions that will help create healthy, respectful manhood. And I haven't read it yet, but there's a piece in Time magazine today about how to raise a sweet son in an era of angry men. And I want to specifically mention 2 organizations. One is A Call to Men, and the other one is Mentoring Violence Prevention. And they work with schools, with organizations, with institutions, and they come in with programs. And they're useful to any organization. I mean, they would be useful here, because I assure you that sexual harassment is occurring here. It can't not be because of the systemic nature of it.
You know, it's interesting. I've sort of looked back, less so at my work life, but just at life in general, and sort of thought to myself, was there something that at some point in my life that I thought was just normal, that in hindsight you go, man, I shouldn't have done that. And I don't mean anything necessarily major, but even minor things can seem minor to you and not to someone else. And it's been a good lesson for me as well. So I'm sure it is for companies, et cetera.
Well, to that I say bingo. Yeah. And well done, because that self-inquiry is really powerful. And if more folks would do it, then I think it's shame reducing also to be able to talk about it. I mean, I consider myself, you know, a very determined and committed advocate for gender equality. It is the hill on which I'm willing to die. And I have all kinds of, you know, non-feminist behavior and non-feminist thoughts all the time, because I'm a work in progress too.
Let me ask you a question about being the hill you're willing to die on. You and I are friends. I mean, I should say that. And I watched after the election as you sort of found your voice in talking about a lot of things. You had the protest right after. And you took a lot of criticism from people who were maybe fans of yours or Kentucky fans with you. And a lot of the statements were very mean. And I know you saw some of that. How do you deal with that?
It's a good question, and there are several answers. One is there are just certain things for which I'm willing to risk my very life. And it's about healthy self-esteem and healthy boundaries.
By the time people watch this, you will have already done this, but you're going to a UK game tomorrow.
Yes.
And if someone were to come up to you, see, here's what I worry about as your friend. I worry somebody's going to come up to you and say something tomorrow. And I don't think most Kentucky fans would do that, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone didn't. Will that hurt you if that happens, or you just are able to block that off?
Of course, it would. Yeah.
Well, I hope it doesn't. So I mean,
and that's you know, if the person is mean-spirited enough, that may even give them the incentive to do it. If I'm willing to be vulnerable enough to admit that it might hurt me. But I think Kentucky basketball is sacred.
Well, I think it's... We all should be able to be UK fans together. So let's talk about UK just a second. What do you think of this year's team?
I like them. You know, there's nothing fresh that I have to add to the conversation. We're really young. I like Diallo. I'm enjoying Kwade's games when he does well. I'm very impressed with our 10 to 12 footers. That hasn't been a huge part of our game for a couple seasons, and they're exciting to see. I miss our bread and butter, the alley-oops, because that was such a exciting part of our repertoire for a couple seasons there. And I'm excited to see the team in person.
What is my all Ashley Judd team?
Oh, what a good
Like
question.
for like you're putting your five together, the all Ashley Judd team of your fandom. Who is it?
Oh, golly, what a question. Well, Tayshaun came to mind, Ron Mercer came to mind, of course Tony, because he's one of my favorites. But some of our recent guys have been so phenomenal, like you gotta bow to the brow.
Bow to the brow. Nice. All right, so now you've given me Tayshaun, Mercer, Delk, and Davis. That's a good team. Who's your point guard? And you got a roster right there.
I'm debating between Fox and Wall.
Okay, well, there you go.
I'm debating between Fox and Wall. There was something that Coach Hall said to me, Granddaddy. He was talking about how beautiful John Wall's hands were, and that always made such an impression on me because
really?
he's seen a lot of hands handle basketballs. But even John Wall conceded that he thought Fox was maybe a little quicker than he was. But I also loved DeMarcus Cousins, you know. I mean, I've got my sentimental favorites like Patrick Patterson when he would just brink his lunch pail and clean up the trash in the middle. I mean, it was just fun.
Yes, no, you're right about that. I want to finish with this. If someone's watching this, a young woman who's dealing with some of the issues
Yes.
that you've talked about, what is your recommendation on literally what they would do now? I mean, there is
Right.
someone watching this either on TV or online that I know is sitting there going, what do I do? What would you say?
So there's a really good organization called RAIN. It's the Rape and Incest Network. I would look them up online. I would also, if you're a university student, go to your counseling center on campus. And actually, that's one of the things I recommend. If you're not going through something, go to that counseling center and see how it works. So if, God forbid, you're ever in that position or one of your friends is in that position, you can know how the process works and also be engaged in upstream advocacy. So if your counseling center is lacking sensitivity or certain services, you can help get those in place before your need is dire. You can always DM me on Twitter.
You mean that, actually?
I absolutely mean that.
Yeah.
And, you know, talking to a safe person is really important. And sometimes I think we look for, or we think that the answers have to be these complex and sort of policy-driven solutions, when in fact conversation and dialogue are a great starting point. Another thing I would add is that, and I'm giving you a very long answer
That's okay.
because it's an important subject, to understand that neurobiologically the way we respond is valid. So fight, flight, and freeze are natural and normal and predictable. And however we respond in the moment is really okay. We might be confused, we might go limp, we might fight, we might disassociate, we might comply, and all of that is coming from a very deep and old place in the brainstem, and it's really okay. And I think that knowledge is a huge piece of shame reduction, and then the shame reduction helps